Welcome, everyone. And thanks again for joining us for our webinar today on how to customize your records using field mappings. So as Sarah said, I'm Nancy Lobbs, one of the trainers here at Bullhorn. And today we're going to take a look at the Field Mappings Admin Tool. So just to give an idea of what we're going to be covering, we will be looking at what are field mappings and how do we change them, how to add a new field using this tool, and also some tips and tricks on using field mappings. So what are field mappings anyway, and how do we change them? Well, field mappings are used to control the location and the behavior of fields that display on both the add and the edit pages of records. Now, these are only accessible to users with an admin user type in Bullhorn, and you can certainly use this tool to edit existing fields. For example, you might want to add a new value to a drop-down field, or add a new field altogether, or even hide an existing field on one of your records. So let's take a look, and I'll just switch over to Bullhorn right now. And the first thing that I'm going to do to edit a field mapping is we have to start by going to our main menu and opening up our admin folder here, and then select field mappings. So many of you, if you are Bullhorn administrators, know that all of these items on the left-hand side of the page are our main entities that we do have the ability to edit. And so the first thing I'm going to do is expand the candidate entity here on the left. And let's say that I wanted to add a new value to my employee type field. So the first thing that I would have to do is scroll down and find the employee type field. And I knew it was pretty close to the top, but of course I could have used the field column header to search on a keyword, to quickly locate that field. I'm going to go ahead and click on the employee type field name to open up the field map window here. And the first thing that I want to change here, of course, is the edit type of the field. All right, so you can see that it's currently set up as a mini picker field, more about that later, but I have the ability to switch this now to a drop-down field instead. So I'm going to go ahead and make that change. And then you'll notice that under Allow Multiple Values, we have it currently set to a multiple value, but with a drop-down field, you always want to select single value, which forces the user to select a value from that predefined value list. And then next, I would need to update my value list field here. You can see my current options are W-2 and 1099 for employee types, but let's say I'd like to add one for H-1B. And you'll notice I just type in that value, separated by a comma, no spaces are required. And then I can either hit the Submit button here at the top, or the Save button here down at the bottom of the screen. Really, it doesn't matter. Either one does the same thing. My changes get applied. And I do want to mention that changing a field mapping, like a field type from a mini picker to a drop-down, will not change the value that's already present in that field on an existing record. Now, I want to search next for one of my sample candidate records, and I'll use Jordan Kendall here as my example. So if I go up to the Find field, you can see that I previously searched for her. So she's already available in my list of results here. So I can simply click on her name. And we, of course, want to check out the employee type field. But first, I'll need to refresh my screen and then reload the page in order to see that update. Now, of course, when you do that, it automatically closes the record, but no worries. I can go back up to the Find field, reopen Jordan Kendall, click on my Edit tab here of her record, and then when I go to the employee type field here, we can look at the list of drop-down values, and there's my new value for H1B, which I could easily switch her employee type to that, and then of course save the update if I wanted to do that. But let's assume she is a W-2 employee, so we'll just leave that as is. Now, what about adding a brand new field? Perhaps you might want to add a secondary contact to your job or your vacancy record, because frequently, maybe you interact with someone other than the original ordering source. So first, I need to go back to Field Maps, which of course closed out. So I'm going to open my admin folder once again and click on Field Mappings. And then I'm going to go ahead and navigate to my job entity. All right, so one of the first things that I want to mention here is that you should always, whenever you're thinking about creating a new field, check first to see if Bullhorn has that field already created that's currently hidden from view so that you are able to just activate it. So what I'm going to do next is just expand my master job track here and then search in the label column for a field called secondary contact. And you can see that I don't have any results. Let me clear those filters and try once again, just searching on the keyword contact. And you can certainly see that I have a field for the primary contact on my job record. But since I didn't get any results for that secondary contact, I feel comfortable creating a new field. So once again, I'm going to clear my filters, and I'll start by searching on the field column header this time to find an unused custom text field. Now, you should always select the custom field with the highest number to use first and work your way down, because there are a limited number of custom fields available, and the lower the number, the closer you are to running out of those custom fields. So I'm going to use the field column header and then just type in here custom text. And when I hit enter on my keyboard, you can see that I have a variety of custom text fields available, but it looks like from these results, custom text 20 is the highest number that's currently hidden from view. So I'm going to select that particular custom field to create my new field for the secondary contact. So to do that, I'm going to just left click on custom text 20 to open up that field map window. And then I'm going to go into the display field. And this is where you customize the label that will appear on the field. So we're going to call it our secondary contact. And then next we come to the edit type for the field. And it's currently just a text field, which would mean that the user could type in anything. But in this example, I would like to set up this field as a picker list. And so for the secondary contact name, I would need to select the picker text client field. Now, one thing that you probably noticed when I was in that drop-down list is that the text field has the most edit types. Let's take a look at that again. When you're deciding on which edit type to use, I think it's really important to think about, what information are you trying to capture and how are you going to be using that field? Because some of the most common edit types included here are, just a regular text field, which it's a free text field. The user could enter any information. Now, if you use a drop-down field, on the other hand, this is best used in a situation where you want a single selection and, basically force a value from the list that you predefine. The mini picker option is slightly different. It looks a lot like a drop-down field, but I want to tell you that you should not use this if you would like to report on the field later, because it does allow users to add their own values in addition to what's in your predefined list. There's also the select option. Now, this is best used in situations where you want the user to be able to select multiple values in the field. And then the radio button, and I'm sure you've all seen these. But this is another field not to use if you want to report on it, because it always defaults to the first value. And then lastly, we have all of these picker fields, which allows for a lookup into those values in your database. So in this case, we want the field to be able to search for current contacts in our database. Now, I definitely recommend that you check out our article in our Bullhorn community. It is called Understanding Field Edit Types. And of course, you can access it just by going to Help, right there in the upper right-hand corner of our interface next to your username. And you can search for it just by a keyword or phrase like edit types. And that'll provide you with a lot of information about these different types of fields. All right, now to continue creating our field, the next field is for required. And we're going to leave this set to no, since not all clients will have secondary contacts. But the field is currently hidden because, if you remember, it was a custom field originally, not in use. So we do need to switch this to no in order to make the field visible on the job screen. And then for allow multiple values, we're going to leave that set to single, since it's a picker list. And then the sort order, I'm going to change from 5,000 to 100. And here's why. Let's say that we would like this secondary contact field to display just below the primary contact and maybe before the open closed field on the job record. Now, you really should plan this out in advance. So if we take a look at an existing job or vacancy record, you can see where these two fields fall on the Edit tab. And just for purposes of training, I'm going to fast find for a sample job order or vacancy by its ID number. And it's this marketing manager here. So when I open it up, what I'm going to do next is navigate to the Edit tab of the record. And it's really best to first determine the sort order of these two fields in advance, and then assign our new field a sort order number that would fall somewhere in between. So as you can see, we have a contact field for our primary contact, and then we have this open closed field. We want our secondary contact field to fall in between those two. So if we return back to field mappings, we can search on these two particular fields to find that information. So let me go back to field maps here for just a second. I'm going to come back up here to the top of my job order, or job entity, I should say, and clear those existing filters. And then the next step would be for me to search on the contact field, which was the primary contact, in our label column header here. And you can see that field has a sort order of 90. Next, I'll clear that filter and search on my open closed field. And we can easily see that one has a sort order of 110. So by giving our new field a sort order of 100, it will display exactly where we want it. It should fall right in that spot. All right, so I'm going to go back to my field map window, which I still have open, and finish saving this new field. So I have my sort order. All I need to do is click Submit or Save here at the bottom to add that new field. Now, one thing that I'd like to mention here, though, is that if we use job tracks and we want this field on each job track, we'll need to add the field to the remaining tracks. So by that, I mean job track 2 through 5, as you can see here in field maps. And we would need to use the same custom text field on each track. And since we do have job tracks set up in our application, I want to show you how to update the job track for contract positions. So I'm going to collapse the master job track and go into job track 2. And first, what I'm going to do is search for that exact same custom field. So remember, I used custom text 20 previously. So in my field column header, that's exactly what I'm searching for. And we can see it's currently a hidden field. So basically, I can go through the same steps, the same process again to create the secondary contact field. So I'm going to left click on the field name there. We're going to just change the display name to secondary contact. We're going to change the edit type to my picker text client. We'll leave the required field set to no, again, since not all clients will have secondary contacts, but it is currently hidden from view, so we need to change this to no to make that field visible. Our multiple values is already set to single, so we can leave that alone. And we're going to update our sort order again to 100, and then just submit that to add that new field. Now, if I refresh my screen and reload the page, I should be able to see the new secondary contact field on a contract job or vacancy record. So going back to my marketing manager position, I'm going to refresh and reload my page once again. Reopen my marketing manager position. And let's take a look at the edit tab of our record. And we can now see our new secondary contact field, which would allow us to search for any contact that might be associated with this company, Western Training, right? So it would have to be a contact, obviously, associated with that client. And notice how it falls right in between our contact and our open closed field. All right, so now let's take a look at some tips when it comes to using our field mappings tool. You know, you can use what we call custom correlated fields when you need to add maybe some custom information to flow from a job to a placement. Now, the field must be populated on the job or vacancy record before adding the placement. If the field is filled in after the placement is created, the information will not carry over. So, for example, you might want to track a client's purchase order number for a particular opening. So going back in Bullhorn, we're going to reopen our field mappings tool once again. And then first expand our job entity and search on a keyword here in our field column header for the correlated custom text fields. Okay, and just like before, I would always want to select the one with the highest number first. In this case, it would be the correlated custom text field 10, which is currently hidden from view. You would just click on the field name and then fill out the details in this field map window, as we did earlier when we created that secondary contact field, and then save it. You know, so for example, in the display name, this is where we would put purchase order number. We would make it visible by changing this to no, right? And then probably in this case, we would just leave it as a text field since a purchase order number may contain both alpha and numeric information. And then we would just click save or submit to add that new field, that correlated field to my job. Now, once it's added to the job, we'll need to collapse that entity and expand our placement next. And we would just follow the same steps to create the field there. But what's really important to remember is that you must use the same correlated custom field number that you selected when adding the field to the job. So, in our case, it was correlated custom text 10. And remember, if your company uses multiple job and placement tracks, you'll need to repeat these steps on each track too. Now, there's one final tip that I would like to share with you all, and that's about repurposing existing fields. It's really not a good idea to take an existing field, and by that I mean anyone that has a name that does not start with the word custom, and then just change it to something else. So for example, if I collapse the placement entity and go back up to my candidate entity at this point, and let's just say I was considering adding a field related to the candidate's education. So what I would want to do first is come over here to this label column and search on the keyword education. And you can see that we actually do have an existing field called education level, but it is currently hidden from view. Now, if we wanted to create a new field, what I'm suggesting is you would not want to change this education level field by simply changing the label to, let's say, a marital status field instead. Because you see, oftentimes Bullhorn system fields have coding behind the scenes, and this can cause errors. Also, these fields will feed into reporting, okay? And in order to ensure accurate data, you want to make sure that you don't repurpose existing fields. Now, if for some reason you run out of custom fields and you find yourself in a situation where you do need to repurpose a field, just always check with support first. All right, so to wrap up here for today, I'm going to go back to my slides. And we did cover what are field mappings and how to change them, how to add new field mappings to create custom fields, and also some field mappings, best practices, and tips. I do want to thank you all for joining today. I'm glad that you found some time to be able to attend, and I hope that you found this webinar helpful. But remember, for more information, you can always check out our customer community by clicking on Help. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it back over to you for any questions that may have come up.
Thanks, Nancy. We did get a couple. Our first question is, I see a lot of different options for field edit types. What's the difference between a float and integer field?
Well, that's a great question. And it actually gives me the opportunity to show our help article on understanding field edit types. So back in Bullhorn, I would just want to click on Help. And then once this page loads, I'm looking for help on our Bullhorn ATS. So I will click on that tile here. And then in the search field, if I just type in a keyword or phrase like edit types, we can see this article that came up right here at the top of the list, Understanding Bullhorn Field Edit Types. So from this article, you'll be able to see that a float field, and it's actually organized by the different types of fields here, is definitely used for numbers with up to 2 decimal places, whereas an integer field is a field that would only accept whole numbers in that field. But this is a great article. You can see that it breaks it down by the different types of fields, whether it be for dates or times, predefined values, numbers, as well as text fields. So I find this a great reference tool when you're considering making any field mappings changes.
Thanks, Nancy. Our next question is, There's a new entity I noticed in field mappings for notes. How is that used?
Another good question. Okay, so if you are on Bullhorn's Novo interface, this is where you will now go to configure your note actions. So let me go ahead and collapse my candidate entity. And the nice thing is all of these are listed in alphabetical order as we come down the page here. And if I expand our note entity, you can see there are just very few fields here. And if I click on action and even expand our value list here, you can literally see all of the note actions that we have available in our database. And it's really quite easy. It works the same way as it used to in system settings. You would just add in any new value. Remember, it's comma separated values without any spaces. Or if you wanted to remove a note action, just simply delete it and then make sure that you hit the submit button or the save button down here at the bottom of the page. And then, of course, refresh and reload your screen in order to see that change take effect. And, you know, it's always a good idea to check out your work whenever you've made any changes using these admin tools. And if the reloading the page doesn't work, especially with the Novo interface, just quickly log out and log back in, and then you should see those changes take effect.
Thanks, Nancy. So I think because we only have 2 minutes left, I'm going to go ahead and call it there. But as a reminder, we will be sharing the webinar recording with all attendees within the next 24 to 48 hours. In the future, if you ever can't make a particular time for a webinar, make sure that you register anyway, because we'll go ahead and send the webinar recording out to you. But for the questions that we didn't have time to get to, I see there are still ones coming in. We'll make sure to follow up via email with those answers. Our next training webinar is going to be called Advanced Search Techniques, and that will be on October 14th. We will include registration information in this webinar follow-up, but you can also find upcoming webinar information at www.bullhorn.com/events. For additional training resources, don't forget to log into the Learning Hub through the customer community at help.bullhorn.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice day.
Thanks all.